You're tuned in to RX Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to RX Radio. Myself, Jordan Jiunta, here joined today by the one, the only, Marek Bugera. Everyone's favorite Instagram dad.
Yeah.
It's great to have you, man. Always a pleasure.
That is where we're at now.
We got a topic queued up for you guys, which is typically not the case, but we prepared for 4 minutes today. But before we hop into the podcast, I just want to keep you guys updated on what's going on in the Prescript world. So right now we have Dr. Dwayne Jackson's Body Composition Nutrition course live for sale, open for registration. This course will go live on the 7th of August. So you have between now and then to register. Everything you need to know about body composition. Dwayne goes into incredible detail on the science, and science not just around nutrition, but around compliance, around psychology, mentality, even social aspects that contribute to body composition and compliance on a nutrition regimen. Dwayne's the guy. He's the man. He'll take all the raw data, he'll interpret it, and he'll spoon feed it to you in a way that is very applicable, that is very digestible, so that you can take that information and you can make changes with yourself and with your clients with it. So I can't recommend that enough if you guys are interested in furthering your knowledge in nutrition in general, specifically as it applies to body composition. Aside from that, Prescript Level 1 will go for sale in August. So if you haven't taken the Prescript Level 1 yet and you're interested, class starts in September. Go to the website www.pre-script.com and go to the Level 1 page, put your email down in the opt-in list. That is the only way that you can get a discount for the Level 1 course. All right, so put your name on the list and just wait. And we'll send you an email when the course goes live for sale in August, and you will get a discount code. That's the only way to get a discount for the course. And we'll see you in class, and you can attend the labs with myself and Marek Bugera and really see the worst side of us. Because this will be a tame worst side of us, but it gets worse. It gets worse. Anyways, so that's what's going on with Prescript. Aside from that, Marek Bugera, welcome back to the show, probably for your, 12th appearance now. How many times have you been on the RX Radio?
I'm too tired to know, bro. Like at this point, we'll let like Marshall put up like a running tally or something like that. It's probably more effective. He's probably the one that's actually on the ball the most, just dealing with all of our bullshit.
Yeah, that's fair. For those of you that don't know yet, you should know Marek Bugera. He's the one that does anything moderately professional or anything that is well-researched or factual, anything that sounds like an adult did it at Prescript. That's Marek Bugera.
Yeah, it's my claim to fame is written skills and taking shit seriously. Like you said, it all goes downhill from here.
Yeah. It was professional until now. There will be a dick joke before the end of this podcast. So today, I think a good topic for us to talk about is kind of, as you phrased it before we started recording, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be? From everyone's favorite internet dad, Marek Bugera. But a little more seriously, how long have you been in the training industry?
Yeah, I did my undergraduate way back in 2007 to 2007 to 2011 in kinesiology. And essentially from that point on, so 2011 or so, I've been in commercial gyms working as a trainer or online now in my current iteration ever since that point. So 2011 or so until, 2014, halfway through, we're like, 13 or so and change years, something like that, off and on. So I've been doing it a while from like purely the perspective of a trainer. As we're kind of riffing back and forth on the topic beforehand, it truly is like if I were to look at people going through almost the kinesiology lens, like the exercise science degree lens, as I'm sure like your chiropractic experience, like that's a graduate level degree. At the same time, I'm actually curious of this question for you, because I was going to say, looking at people in kinesiology, if I were to go to my graduating class, like the high school style, like graduating class photo on the wall, all of us standing there, all super happy, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed with our stupid caps on. What do you want to be when you grow up? Because as I was going through my kinesiology degree, there was only a handful of real kind of professional options, if you want to call it that. There was getting a physical education degree and then doing education proper and then becoming literally like a gym teacher, which shout out gym teachers, Hunter Keith fucking writes.
Yeah, man.
Not my thing. I have a child of my own now, and I'm like, that's enough. I got mine. Don't need to be interacting or teaching or putting up with everybody else. You could go down the physical therapy route. You can do athletic therapy, get into physio. I was like today days old when I realized you don't actually need a kinesiology or athletic therapy background to get into physical therapy, at least where I was at, which is wild. You'd think, but you could be an English major and become a physical therapist, which probably
Low bar.
probably happens. And as I say that, it probably explains a lot actually in our industry. But that really wasn't for me either. So I kind of knew, okay, let's do kinesiology and I guess I'll just be a trainer. And at the time, it literally was like, I guess I'll just be a trainer. Like that vocabulary, just a trainer, when I first started was kind of it, because I didn't foresee or predict like where this would go, aside from this is what I'm going to do. Like I'm going to be a trainer in a commercial gym. That was like the next step beyond my degree. In terms of career development, like what next steps beyond that could be, I had no idea. There was no person ahead of me in my life or in my circle that was that could explain to me like, okay, you did your degree. You're already wildly overqualified for most places. Got it. You became a trainer. Now you're going to do this for X amount of years before the next obvious step in professional development. Like none of that really existed in my world. The extent to which, if I go back, like I alluded to, and I start looking at the graduation class photo, if I could start picking off, okay, how many of you are actually in the area of physical fitness, wellness, like in the kinesiology like space? I almost guarantee it's a very, very small handful, because I don't think a lot of people that at least I went to school with had a similar idea, unless they were in those more direct professional streams of physical education, physical therapy, and so on and so forth. Looking at you as a chiropractor as well, which I feel like with the amount of podcasts and your, presence on the internet, I think people realize you are not just a chiropractor. Like going through that same sort of lens, like, okay, look at your graduating class. How many people are practicing chiropractors? How many people branched off? How many people washed completely from the fitness industry more broadly? It's interesting to see the burn rate of new grads or people within the first few years. So like for you, what's your perspective on, at least from the kinesiology or the chiropractic standpoint? Like, is it a similar sort of experience?
Yeah, it's almost identical, to be honest. So just to give a little bit of background in my pursuit of a chiropractic degree, my undergrad is in biology, which is a largely useless degree to have. A bachelor's of science in biology. What the fuck do you do with that? But it is kind of a prerequisite, or it marks a lot of the prerequisites you would need to go into like a higher level degree, something that has to do with anatomy, physiology, the human body, right? So that's exactly what I was that was the plan in going with my undergraduate degree. I, at the time, very similar to you, similar timeline, I guess it would have been 2010. Can you hear these people? There's people that will not shut the fuck up outside of my door. We're not going to pause the podcast. I'm just going to go out and yell at these people to shut the fuck up and then come back.
We'll do it live.
I know. If there's one more bout of laughing, we'll do it live. So my sophomore year of undergrad was when I got my first training certificate. At that point, I had already been training for probably 8 years, to be honest. Train myself and like with friends, that sort of thing, like come work out with me. I got my first, so that would have been 2010. So it's now 2024. So about 14 years I've been training, and going through undergrad wasn't specifically me learning me leveraging the knowledge I was learning to train better. But that was the intention that I had moving into graduate school. So I didn't really know what I wanted to be or what I wanted to do when I grew up. I just knew that, okay, like my biology degree is a stepping stone to go into something where I can start to continue to grow my knowledge around training. So I didn't really know what a kinesiology degree was. I still don't really know what the fuck a physio is. I don't know if that's a thing in this state. Like, what the I don't fucking know. There's a physical therapist in the States, or a doctor of physical therapist, or physical therapy. But anyways, so like the route that I saw, and this was like very apparent to me because the gym that I had worked out in predominantly when I was in high school going into college, there was a practice with 2 chiropractors in there that were basically personal trainers that practice chiropractic as well. So I'm like, I don't fucking know what I'm going to do, but that seems kind of cool. So applied to chiropractic school. I got into 2 different schools. I chose the one that had a better sports program. Sports program doesn't mean much, but as I got into chiropractic school, my entire goal while I was in school was to leverage the knowledge that I was using to get better at training. And that's what I did throughout school. And I didn't really know, like, to answer the short question you asked me, in chiropractic school, they gave us a statistic. They basically said, like, this is maybe like the first semester we're in there, first quarter that we're in there. They said, look around the room. In 5 years, 50% of these people will not be practicing. And I'll bet it's relatively true. I mean, look at a small sample size. Like me and Shallow graduated together. One of us is practicing, one is not. So like, I mean, that's a little bit too biased or too small of a sample size to really show the point. But like, a lot of people get out of practice because it's similar to what I see in personal training is they can't figure out how to make a living doing it. Right? You can be good at the hard skills of chiropractic or the hard skills of training, but you can also be really bad at running a business or understanding how to run a business. And you could be really shit at sales. You can be really shit at retention. Even if you have all the hard skills or all the knowledge that would predict that you would be good at training people, you could be lacking the interpersonal skills. You could be lacking communication skills, organizational skills, time management skills. These are all things that if we're looking at like a larger scale organization, like someone that does personal training for a big box gym, they're going to take care of a lot of that stuff for you. But there's a very low ceiling in terms of potential of how far can you progress and that and actually make a living for yourself. And that's the thing that I see is where people leave the training industry because they progress to that point where now, all right, I've outgrown the box gym setting and they don't have the skills which they need to be able to transition on their own and run a successful business. So that's what I've seen, or that's where I see people fall short, is that we're in an interesting time right now where people like you, people like a lot of the people that are probably listening to this podcast right now, they have the ability to be an online coach, which is a way that you can use your time maximally efficiently. I don't know. There's probably a better way to say it. You can be maximally efficient with your time, and you can make a really good living online coaching if you have the skills, if you have the organizational skills, the time management skills, if you can create efficient systems for client management. And that's something that didn't really exist when you and I got into training, right? It was, you just rack up the hours, you have 10-hour days, you're making a decent amount of money per hour, but you're working long days, like you're earning that money. And not to say that online coaches aren't earning their money now, but there's a much greater earning potential with a better return on the time that you're putting into it. And that's something that's competitive across the board, like wherever you are. Like there's a lot of coaches making 6-figure income from their living room. And that's that's cool to see. That's something that you had to hustle to do, even like I'd say 5-6 years ago in the in-person training industry.
Yeah, you're describing essentially the first how long actually? 5 to 8 years of my career, most likely. The exact premise of let's get to a box gym. So graduation, kind of never had a plan otherwise. Let's get to the box gym setting and just use the degree as a leverage point to start my career. Okay, let's start building up my initial clientele base, realize where I have not that I had foresight to use it to realize where my gaps were. My gaps in skills were just presented to me viciously and like a blunt object when I would fall on my face, as you described. But the idea that you could even go into a diversified, either online sort of model, multi-revenue stream model that a lot of people get into, like the merchandising is wild. How even still, it blew up for a while. It's still kind of there where everybody has their own shirts, everybody has their own like merchandise they're trying to push, which is insane. But none of that existed. It's the same general premise that I started my educational career with, where it's like, okay, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Kinesiology, as you did with you, this directly serves me, or at least I thought it would in my own training, and I'm interested in it, so let's do that. Oh, the only real dovetail after this is training other people? Cool, I can at least do that to start. And then the slow realization that, okay, what's the next step after this? Okay, the box gym is the only thing that really exists that is stable and lucrative enough to get upright early in the career. But then there's a very natural bottleneck that occurs if you actually put forth the early pain management time of building your actual stable clientele base, putting in, as you described, the 10 hours, some might say 12 to 15 hours, with only 8 hours on the books and even less paid, depending on where you are and what you were doing. There's an asinine amount of effort to build a clientele base, only to realize, oh, wait, this is a completely unsustainable lifestyle. And it's gotten, I will, to the credit of the state of the commercial system, it has gotten better over time, but it's not necessarily a career orientated gig either. It's not like you have, okay, could be a, some of them have it. This is not great. This is my insurance plan through my corporation. This is my retirement planning. This is X, Y, or Z. Most of those things don't really exist. And usually the archetypical person that's getting into our space is too young to register or predict those as being actual problems. You're young enough where insurance isn't really, who gives a shit? I'm young, I'm healthy, nothing wrong, nothing bad can possibly happen to me until it does. Not having a great plan doesn't really matter. Let's out of pocket everything until you can't. I'm 25, I'm 30, I'm 35. I have other goals in my life. My entire time frame of Monday through Saturday or even Sunday is just completely monopolized by training other people on their schedule. Well, where do I get my shit in? And also, I've capped myself on potential income.
Right.
Well, shit. How do I start raising that? Well, I ever escalate my quote unquote level of service or my personal training level, which raises my revenue and income via just reflecting my price upon the client, until maybe I price myself out of my clientele base in that area. And then what? Like, it's a very natural sort of evolution that if you're able to get past the first pain point, like I said, there's more coming over and over and over. And no one really has that sort of projected mentality on it. When I get to this stage, what then? When I get to this stage, what then? There needs to be more proactivity in that aspect. And that's something that I see as probably the biggest predictor of someone washing is, do they have the resilience to hit a wall and pivot or start to build skill sets to get them out of whatever pain point they enter? But also, are they thinking maybe 2 or 3 steps of their life ahead as to where will I be at this age and what are my needs going to be? Because again, the fitness space is a very youth biased sector.
Right.
And thinking about when you're 25, 35, 45, 55, some people have cubicle gigs and they'll just get there at 25 and retire at 65, never leaving that cubicle, and have a happy life and have savings and a house and whatever they're going to do. Trainers, are you going to be a commercial gym floor trainer until you're 45, 55, 65? I don't know. That doesn't seem like the norm. I'm not going to say it's not normal, but it doesn't seem like the norm. So how do you start to framework or engineer your life in sort of these stepwise progressions? I'll tell you this much. Where I'm at now, by 27, 28, 29, even 30, it was a distant like flicker in the future. I had no, I was smart enough and had been in the commercial gym scene long enough to realize this is a hamster wheel, which served its purpose early. It serves its purpose early. It's essential to build the skills that you alluded to. Some business acumen, some idea of how the fitness space actually works for finding and building clientele bases, basic business practices and management. That's great. But it's a hamster wheel that gets harder and harder to get off of as your time or resources get pinched more and more by your own successes. So how do you find your way out?
Yeah, I love that perspective, and I completely agree. I think that there's levels of success that you need to meet that then necessitate growth. And I like the idea of it becoming a hamster wheel, because you have to get to the point where what you're doing is so uncomfortable and you make the realization that it's not sustainable for you to necessitate that next change or make your way to that next level. And I do agree with the point that you have to go through this progression. You can't skip the steps, because you learn the skills along the way that you can build on top of. Because someone that has, maybe they're training 12 hours a week, 12 clients, they haven't gotten to the point where those skills are automatic. They're probably doing a lot of prep for each client. There's a lot involved outside of those 1 hour sessions. They're probably wasting a lot of time. They're not very efficient. But someone that's training, 40 client facing hours a week, now, okay, they're still doing things. They're doing scheduling, they're doing programming, they're doing organizational stuff outside of that. So maybe their week it's not 40 hours of work. Like you said, there's those unpaid hours in the day that they're probably training and shoving food in their face and doing the organizational stuff, but they're working probably a 60-hour work week. And you can do that for a bit, and the money's probably going to be good, but you're going to get to the point where you're burnt out on it. But the benefit of that is you learned how to fill your schedule. You learned your work capacity there. You learned how to be efficient in managing clients. And now you can take those skills to the next tier of success. You've now necessitated change to the point like, all right, I've done all the things. I've found success in the way that I can find success as an in-person trainer. Now I need to take a step back, and I need to figure out how I can buy back my time. And I think that progression, it has to go that way. You have to fill your schedule before anything else. That's proof of concept. If you don't fill your schedule, then what proof of concept do you have that you'll even be successful in this industry? So you have to get to that point where you're so busy, you're in so much demand that you cannot capitalize on all of that demand. The thing that's going to come with that is you're probably making good money. And if you're not, you're dumb. Up your rates until your schedule thins, and then fill it again. And keep doing that, like you said, until you price yourself out of the area that you're in. Okay, now you have, hopefully, you're somewhat responsible with your money, and you have a little bit of a buffer in terms of now you can afford to take less clients because you have some money in the bank. And you can buy some breathing room to figure out the next step. And I think what that next step is, right now, it's moving online. It's offering online services. And a system that I've used and I've seen other trainers use that seems to be really successful is you get to a point with your in-person clients where it is autopilot for both of you. They come in, you're just going through the movements, like you're going through the motions of it. Like, how are the kids? How was your vacation? What'd you do this weekend? You're not really teaching them anything. There's no growth in terms of training. They know what to do. They know how to do it. They're setting it up. Like, it's rinse, repeat. So once you get to that point, sell those clients an online service where maybe you're charging them $100 an hour is like a reasonable rate, I think, for personal training. I think that's a lot of trainers, quality trainers, should be charging more than that. But say someone, you're charging $100 an hour, you see them 3 times a week. Okay, you're making $1,200 a month off that client. It takes you minimum 12 hours to manage that client. Okay, now I can move that client online. I could sell them an online service where maybe I charge them, I haven't told you this in a while, Bugera, but up your rates. Maybe you charge them $300 a month. Okay, so now you went from making $1,200 off of a client in the span of a month to $300. But maybe it takes you an hour to manage that client in a month. So now you're going from $100 an hour, probably less once you dilute that out for the time outside that it takes to schedule, program, and manage that client. You're making, we'll call it $80 an hour to $300 an hour if you can manage that client in an hour a month. So your time has more than tripled. It's almost increased 4x the value of your time for that one client. So if you look at it in terms of like dollars per month to dollars to month, yeah, you're making less with an online client, but your potential for your time is so much higher. So you've really valued your time at such a higher rate because you're so much more efficient. So the cool thing about being in the position where your schedule is full and there is that demand, what you can do is you can start to funnel clients into that online service where now you're not losing that income by losing that client, but maybe you can onboard a new in-person client. You can start to funnel them through that way until you get to the point where now you have enough of an online clientele that you can sustain your month-to-month living costs off of that, and you can stop taking in-person clients and really start to double down and capitalize on that time that you buy back from not taking in-person clients to leverage your online presence. And I've seen it happen time and time again. And another point I think that's important to make is like a lot of this lives on Instagram. I think YouTube is another one. I don't know anything about TikTok, but like Instagram, YouTube content, podcasts, that's where a lot of online trainers live. That's where they are with content creation. That's their online presence, which is great and it works. But I've seen people with not a huge following. Like I don't want following to get construed with income because there's not a direct correlation there. To some extent, yes, like you need to have some sort of presence and some sort of following, but you don't need a ton of followers on Instagram or a ton of subscribers on YouTube to make a good living as an online coach. Like a full roster for most people is like 30 to 50 clients. And that's like you're making good money. Like do the math. If you have 50 clients at $300 a month, you're making 15 G's a month. Like not many trainers do that. And that's a good income for someone that, okay, what do we say, 50 clients, an hour a month to manage each of those. You're working 50 hours a month as opposed to 60 hours a week. And you're probably getting you're definitely getting a better return on your time, but you have a lot more spare time. So you're not working from 5 a.m. till 8 p.m. every single day. So that's the move that I see a lot of trainers making right now. And when I see someone that's working a ton of hours and time, making a ton of money, I almost feel sorry for them because I'm like, all right, like you've done the thing, now do the other thing. Like you need to, like you said, you need to get to that point where you can pivot. I think a big part of that is being open and willing to learning new skills. And I think a lot of trainers get comfortable, they get caught in the thing that they're good at. They're very good at in-person training, but they're unwilling to put themselves in a position where they're bad at something, where they're figuring something out. And that's the thing that a lot of people need to understand, that like take the risk. You won't regret it. Maybe it's going to suck for the next 6 months or so, but a year, 2 years from now, when you're making more money and you have a lot more free time and you can do it from your laptop from anywhere in the world, you're going to be a lot happier about the decision that you made.
I'd say the big thing from what you're describing that I would really emphasize is that the pain of whatever you're currently doing needs to outweigh the risk of making that change and the risk of investing in learning the skill or like being shitty at something. Because making the leap from in-person in like this training wheels environments where like a big box commercial gym is directly invested in your success because it draws them money as well. Once you remove all of that and it's entirely upon you, there is a risk of failure because you then have to be motivated enough to hold yourself accountable to do all the steps of, it's the same general premise as, okay, being a trainer versus becoming a gym owner. Well, you cease to be a trainer when you're a gym owner primarily because, Jesus Christ, you have to run a gym. Like there's so many things that go involved in that. When you make the leap to online, there is now infrastructure. You're your own genuine, even if it's just from a administrative perspective, you're a business owner, assuming, hey, everybody actually do it legit and like, you know, be a business, not just everything under the table. Like, let's be better. there are skills and there are pain points therein as well that you need to get good at that will help you get to the same level of success as you would be in a training wheels environment like the box gym. And when I say training wheels, that's not a disparaging remark. It's where more people, in my opinion, need to get a longer and more a lengthy time of experience is in that box gym setting. Essentially, as you described, like you need to cap yourself, grind to the point of hating the experience almost, because it is so easy for you to maintain, but your hours are so saturated that it is a difficult work-life balance, if we're going to use that term. Up your price, saturate again, basically get to the point where it's mind-numbing and horrendous. Your success is unthinking, because when you make that leap, you will now have a new complement of skills that you have to develop. And you're going to want any and all of those things that were the meat and potatoes of your previous gig, being training humans and programming them, to be so unthinking that it is effectively negligible to no resource drain on your system when you're trying to figure out, okay, if I have to market myself, if I have to get onto the internet and figure out my branding or whatever I'm going to do to attract clientele, develop my funnel, find leads, et cetera, you don't want to be having to invest mental stock into, okay, how do I train this person for this goal? Like, no, you've done this so many times that you can do it blindfolded with your eyes closed. That's the big thing that I see in terms of, as we described, like the burn rate of young trainers in the industry. I did in person in a commercial gym combined for about 5 years before I ever made the leap into an online setting. And that involves 2 very successful runs within box gyms. I did my first iteration directly out of my undergrad, then went back to school, then came back to a box gym again and was highly successful the second time, to the point of extreme burnout the second time. But at that stage, I had that cushion where I could sustain myself for a handful of months if I fell directly on my face. I had my system in place to start funneling clients towards an online presence. And I gave myself the opportunity to learn or get upright all the skills and infrastructure I would need to make that leap. But it wasn't I've done a single year in person. I get it. I've built my clientele base. And then what most people will do at that stage, if they fall on their face, is immediately try to convert online or immediately try to emulate the highly successful upright business of someone that's been doing it for maybe 5, 10, 15 years, for the few that have been around that long. Like I was saying, the merchandise, the podcast immediately, everything aside from the baseline level of just finding people to train and training them. They diversify their quote unquote skill set and they just run themselves ragged, not actually focusing on the thing that's going to bring them the sustainability, which is humans. And it's exactly as you said, it's the allure of the fact that cost per unit time is dramatically in your favor when you convert to online, if you can be successful. And that mathematical equation, like, okay, I need to find 20 to 40, maybe 50 humans to train on the entire internet. I have the entire internet to troll, not just this one building. Oh my God, that will be so. Yeah, it's definitely a much broader market share that you can cast your net, but you also need to be able to capitalize. And that's the thing that people don't have the skill set to do out the gate. And it takes way longer than they believe. So they make the jump too early, don't either have the cushion to develop the skills, or they just outright wash. So there's a couple things there where do the thing in person until you're highly successful, and then do it longer than you think you have to really ingrain the fact that you need to make that jump. There has to be a necessity, not just a desire to.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And you mentioned something early on in that bit about risk. I think risk is an important part of this, especially when you're talking about someone that's working in a box gym setting. A lot of times there's that feeling of maybe you have to pay X amount to the gym to train there, or they're taking a certain percentage. And people get upset about that. But that gives you the luxury of never having to put yourself at risk, right? I think that's something that gets lost, especially in the gym setting. I think a lot of people that have the employee mentality, they don't understand what it takes to run a business, and that's why they're an employee, because it's safe, because there's no risk involved. And the thing about risk is that it's disproportionate to the reward if it pays off, right? The risk is fixed. The risk is, okay, I'm making 7, 8K a month training in person. I'm not going to lose a ton of money moving online. It's incredibly cheap to start an online coaching business. And that's why people are so successful, because the overhead is almost non-existent compared to any other business that you can start. It's, okay, I have a Gmail account. Maybe you pay for like a Calendly subscription or like a G Suite account, but you realistically don't have to pay for anything to start coaching online. Like, you need a laptop and maybe a phone. Like, that's the buy-in. The risk is almost non-existent. The risk is betting on yourself to the point where now you're willing to take a step back from that employment, that safe, that comfortable income, and earn your own money. And the thing about that, I think this is an important point too, and probably some of the advice I would have given myself earlier in my career, is the money you make isn't inherently just going into your pocket. There needs to be a percentage of that you're going to reinvest into your business. So say you start with a laptop and an iPhone, and maybe you start to make a decent amount of money. Maybe you're break even with the amount you were making in person before. Now, don't just take all that money and use it the same way you would had you been in that same situation. Reinvest in your business. Buy yourself a nice camera, a nice microphone. Make some content. Like, invest your time in thinking about things that will be beneficial for you to grow your business. But even further than that, there are benefits which that percentage that your employer is taking that you will get from that. Things like you mentioned before, like especially in the States, like health insurance is a big one. It can be costly. And retirement accounts are a big one. That's something that, like, you can earn 10, 15 grand a month in person, but if you don't have those things set up, like, that can become very costly very quickly. Like, the number one cause of bankruptcy in the States is health-related incidents. So if you go to the ER, if you break your arm or you need a surgery, there goes all your savings. Now you're in debt. So the advice that I would have given myself earlier in my career, because I've been, basically since I earned any money, I've been working for myself, is to start a retirement account right away. Like a Roth IRA is a really safe, easy thing to do. You can go online, start one in probably 5 minutes with a Google search. Like, invest in your future. You don't want to work forever, and you want the money that you're making now to return even greater later on. So invest in retirement ASAP. Do that yesterday. Do that 5 years ago if you could. Like, talk to an accountant. Sometimes you can go back and fund a retirement account for previous tax years. Like, that's something that I think it gets overlooked a lot in this industry, because that's not a luxury that a lot of people have. They don't have like I live in the Silicon Valley, where like starting bonuses for some of the companies, like if we're talking Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, you're going to get $100K in stock. You're going to get a sick like 401k match, retirement plan. You're going to get all these benefits from your employer. You don't have that luxury when you're self-employed. So if you're making 10K a month, by the time you fund these things and you pay taxes, like, you're making maybe 6K a month, like maybe 6K a month. So like, keep that in mind, that the gross income is not what you're going to net at the end of your paycheck. It's like anyone that gets a paycheck, like, you see the gross and you see all the things that get taken out of it, then you see the net. Well, you have to do that for yourself once you're self-employed. So anyone that's working for themselves, I would factor in these things, and I would go into it with that understanding that now you're responsible for being the one. Like, you took the risk. Yes, awesome. There's so much more earning potential when you do, but don't just take all that money and blow it. Take that money, reinvest it in your business, reinvest it in your future, so that you don't have to be taking 50 clients, even online, till the day that you die.
Yeah, you need a lot more income than you think to be as comfortable as the internet would portray.
Right.
The first time you have to do your own taxation or your own savings or anything like that, like the skimming off of your gross to get to the net, like the infrastructure I have is it's a single entity corporation for me. So for my personal side of the business, not Prescript stuff. And yeah, I have to pay into the government sort of retirement funding. I have to pay my own, skim my taxes from the company side, the whole thing. And yeah, it's a kick in the dick. You're like, oh man, look at this monthly gross. Oh, that's my takeaway. Yeah, and that's exactly what would happen in a commercial gym setting, except the employer would do it. And you could check your pay stub and see the gross versus net, but you're just sort of used to it. When you have to do it yourself, there's something special about, again, that kick square in the balls when you're like, oh, I'm just yep, I earned this money and it's not going to hit my personal bank account at all. And I have to pretend it never existed. But that's the thing that most people don't realize is it's not all just like shoes and trips to Bali and like fucking around in like vacation mode. It's you definitely claw back time and efficiency. But in terms of all other risk management, it's still on you. Like the commercial gym setting for me in Canada, like I said, when I first started, it was essentially zero. Now I haven't been in the system for a number of years, but even when I was getting ready to leave, there was some insurance, there was some rumblings of retirement stuff starting to like kick up. So we was starting to get there. But then you start to realize, like, okay, again, the lifestyle. I was around 30 when I left the commercial gym setting, the in-person, fully saturated lifestyle. At 30, you're still young and have that kind of time or mental capacity or energy to be running 12-hour consecutive days, Monday through Friday, even Saturday sometimes, to like finagle all the scheduling, and just sometimes it doesn't make sense to leave because of the commute. Like you're there all the time. Even at 30, I was like, this makes no sense. But then you convert to the online space and it's like, okay, sure, I'm going to claw back some of the time and efficiency. But I think people make the leap into that end game sort of, let's diversify even further. And this isn't, there's like steps to this, like in person, cool. Online, cool. Now you're starting to like match your lifestyle needs or your experience level with what you should start to command for income, but also freedom of movement. Good. But you can't also necessarily be an in-person trainer the same way you can't necessarily, you have a longer lifespan as an online trainer. But maybe it's me, but my perspective is there are natural progressions of a career within this space that coordinate with your life stage as a trainer. So I, at age 21, became a professional in-person trainer. By age, what was it, 2020, so I'm like 30, going on 31 or so, I'm leaving the system entirely. I'm going fully online. I was online for, I'll be real, I started to have some networking with, Prescript, towards the tail end of my professional in-person career. So that was already starting, but it took a little bit of time for me to go from in-person to fully online, from fully online to also diversifying my revenue streams in the online space. I wasn't just a trainer at that stage. I started to get in earnest into fitness education. At that stage, there was a decade or longer under my career belt of experience and high-level education to warrant such a step. But I think that where in person, as I was saying, you need to be there longer than you expect to guarantee you have the skill set to make the jump into the online space successful. You also kind of want to be doing the online thing exclusively to give yourself the resources to focus on the skill deficit of being an independent business before you start to diversify your revenue streams and spread yourself thin in that respect as well. Because the playbook now, pretty much since COVID, where online was kind of like, it was almost like a forced hand sort of thing, which it's fair play. But I am now an online coach. I am an educator of other trainers for some reason. I also am a insert media producer and influencer, and I blah, blah, like the different layers of a career that are completely resource sapping and have next to no ROI the second you get there.
Right. Yeah. And that's the luxury to be able to get to that point where you can now invest your time into things that will return in the future and not immediately. And I think that's where a lot of people get caught up, because you need to be able to give yourself that breathing room to get to that place where you can now start to build your personal brand and start to do things for free that may not have a return right now, but it builds credibility. And it can, of course, return back into the business that you have in terms of online coaching, but it can also create a better trajectory for your career moving forward. I think a place where a lot of people because COVID did kind of catapult this industry. It forced people online, and a lot of people became online trainers. But now in becoming an online trainer, yes, you took that risk. Hopefully it paid off, and now you have a successful online coaching business. I think we're getting to a point where people are reaching a standstill there, where they're maybe at capacity and they don't know where to move from being a sole proprietor, a single person entity. So in my mind, there's two things that will set you apart from the online coach that is just a single person, a personality, versus becoming an actual business. Because when you're a single entity business or a single person business, Yeah, when you're Eric Bugera, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing because you can earn a very comfortable living doing that. But it's the same thing of, all right, are you okay with being in this position? Are you earning enough to do those things that we said before, to save for retirement, to pay for healthcare, to cover your month-to-month needs, to reinvest back into your business, to put some away for savings? And maybe the answer is yes. Yes, you can do all those things and you're comfortable and that's where you want to stay. But for some people, they just keep adding clients and clients in the interest of increasing their top line revenue, which is great, but that's going to get you to the same place that 40-hour a week trainer is. It's going to get you to the place where it's like, all right, what's the next step? And I think the differentiation that I've said this on probably a dozen podcasts at this point, but are you creating a job for yourself? Are you creating work for yourself? Or are you trying to build a business? And if the answer is the latter, if you're trying to build a business, then you need to continue to make your time more efficient and more valuable over time. And it is very truly that let's take a step back so we can take a leap forward. And what that might look like on the online coaching space, typically I'd say the first thing is organizing your time better, becoming more efficient. And this comes with hiring either contractors or employees, where we have Anna behind the scenes at Prescript, and she's the one that gets shit done. She is the one. Like, she organizes everyone's time, she coordinates everything, she saves everyone a bunch of time and a bunch of headaches because her job is to make everyone else's life easier, and she's so good at it. I appreciate you so much, Anna. She might listen to this. Sometimes she listens to podcasts, but having someone like that on your side, on your team, it adds so much value to your business that you may not capitalize on right away, but it gives you the breathing room to capitalize on that time that you've bought back. So there's two gaps that I would recommend filling if you're at this point in your online business. And that would be finding someone to make your time more efficient, take tasks off your plate that aren't pushing your business forward, like scheduling, coordinating times, admin stuff, back end stuff that is time consuming. It requires a level of skill, but not your core competence in your business. So that's one. And that's the first one that I would do, so that you can now be more efficient. You can dedicate more time to the things that are either making you more money or are allowing you to grow your business or build your brand or gain more notoriety in your space. And then the second one is then offloading those tasks, is hiring other coaches under you. Like, that's always been kind of a tricky thing, and it's hard to do well. And I'm not going to speak too much on that, but if you're really looking to grow your business, that has to be the next step. Because if the only way you're bringing in revenue is by having online clients, there's only so many online clients that one person can take. So what it has to be then is, okay, I have my clients. Now I'm going to bring on another coach and I'm going to give them, this is where it has to be a bit delicate, is you have to respect their time, but you also have to understand that now they're in that employee position. They have to understand that they're now in that employee position, right? You have taken the risk and you're bringing them on as an employee. So there is going to be a portion of that revenue that they bring in that you are entitled to because you're taking the risk out of the equation for them. So that's a delicate part of those relationships, and it's one that I've seen done better and worse, but I think there is an expiration date on that type of engagement, just like there is in-person trainers. So that's something that has to be handled a little bit delicately. But if you're looking to build a business, that's going to be the only thing that will get you out of the day-to-day grind so that you can actually run the business. That's you being the gym owner, you being the coaching business owner, as opposed to being the coach. And I think we're getting to that point in this industry based off the timeline of how many people have been able to see success in the coaching businesses that they've built since COVID. And now understanding that, oh, fuck, man, this is exhausting. Like, what can I do to, again, make my time more valuable, buy my time back? And that might mean making the same amount or bringing home the same amount of income that you are, but having 3 coaches under you so that the top line revenue is much higher, but you're fairly compensating the people that are doing the day-to-day work, and you're able to have your time back because you're not the one working in the business, you're the one working on the business.
I can speak to that on a personal level,
Yep.
because I think a lot of people will go from, hopefully they go through like the commercial gym sort of gauntlet to build the capacity to go into an online space, right? And then they will self-identify as business owners, which fair, do as you will. I would argue that, okay, Prescript as an entity designates you and Shallow and Matt and anybody else involved as like business owners. Like, you are operating an actual business. You make decisions based upon like higher order, higher consequence plays of investing in investing in independent contractors, vendors, setting up like actual courses, infrastructure on the website. Like, you're doing actual high level, high risk, high reward business decision making, right? There's much more financial risk at play because you're investing in things that could, and I've been witness to it, things that could just absolutely fall on their face. And it's like, you don't get that money back, and it's not money that was ever going to make it to your pocket as the owner.
Right.
Whereas there is what I am, which is I'm just an independent contractor that has given myself freedom of movement by independently incorporating. Within the confines of a commercial gym, typically you're still generally, it's this weird quasi consideration of an independent contractor under like some weird pseudo contract to that gym specifically. Whereas I have incorporated as Bugera Limited, which allows me the freedom to do my independent business as well as negotiate with, say, a Prescript contract, being like, hey, I will still be a trainer as myself, but also I will work these contracts as designated by you and the tasks you have assigned me. Is that cool? Cool. I'm going to be a fitness writer for insert whichever periodical. I can do that under another independent contract. And any sort of direction I go that isn't in direct conflict with whatever agreements I make. I'm still essentially a contract worker. I just have a method of paying myself and giving myself freedom of movement within this space. I don't have this grand series of plans to like scale or to have anything crazy. It's a method of me having freedom to create the lifestyle and whatever that I would want. But I get to the same bottleneck that you're describing. And it's the same one as in person. You eventually saturate yourself, even though it's better time efficiency, better cost per unit of time. You eventually run out of time as a resource to continue expanding either the type or amount of contracts you're able to take on. And you hit a very natural ceiling where you then have to decide, is this a position that you're happy with maintaining? Or is there now something you need to skim or start to expand into a real business model where you do have employees or you reinvest into the company so that you can make these purchases of like even like AI automation, funneling systems, whatever, take on an assistant, finding ways of having these roles be fulfilled such that it'll claw back more of your time to either double down on other things that you're better at or completely diversify. That's the position that I'm in now. Throw in a young family and it's like, okay, do I do that, the business side of things, or do I take the time that I have that is scarce, but definitely more than a contract to a chain gym would give me, and just reinvest that as being part of a family where and this is actually a very important consideration for people that are getting towards maybe mid-20s, tail end of their 20s. Like, what is your future going to entail? If you're just permanently, and I'm not saying you can't work in a box gym and have a family, but it's a hell of a lot easier when you're free from that in-person sort of scheduling. So there's a ton of like plates that you can spin, and you'll get to the point then where I think at this stage, it's more appropriate to start thinking about where do you want to double down? Either you're happy with where you're at in terms of spinning plates and having whatever independent contracts you can do as an independent contractor, or do you make the choice to become more of a fully fleshed out business, lean into certain aspects and start to get a bigger presence in one area or another? So again, to use myself as that example, in-person trainer, online trainer, starting to get into fitness writing, like paid fitness writing, which is a wild concept in itself, fitness education. Maybe that starts to claw away a little bit of my time and resources from the fitness coaching aspect, such that I can turn another one of those prongs, one of those spinning plates of revenue, into more of a defined career path as I get into a more age-appropriate setting in life that dictates that I can't just be an online trainer all the time. It's the hamster wheel that has just reemerged in a further down the road kind of a setting. So it's be an independent contractor for a specific gym, maybe become your own independent contractor with more freedom of movement to decide how and what you're going to be doing. But then there comes a time where you have to make that choice of, am I now going to become a true business owner and try to expand this thing? Or am I happy where I'm at? Or am I going to start to maybe double down or skim back certain things so I can have more of a balanced life?
Yeah, I love it. I think that's a very real depiction of the way that people will go in this scenario, or the way people should be thinking about going in this scenario. Because it isn't necessarily about building an empire. It's about building a career that gives you the lateral flexibility that you need to do the things outside of work. Because there are people, it's not me, but there are people in this world that want to do other things than have a successful business. And that's great. Like, I want you to be able to do that in the fitness industry, because there's a lot of money to be made. And I know a lot of people that are making a lot of money in the fitness industry, but it's not the same structure that you would have if you were to go work for a Fortune 500 company and you were to have this nice, like, I'm going to go work for 30 years and then retire plan. So I think that's a very real depiction of a lot of people's journey in this space. And hopefully this can give some direction towards people that are getting to that point where hopefully they're uncomfortably successful with what they're doing right now. And it can give them a framework towards, okay, these are the next steps, or this is a direction that I can move within the fitness industry to buy back my time. Because I think that's why a lot of people leave the fitness industry to pursue something outside that has a greater level of comfort associated with it, because they're not taking that risk. But if you are someone, and it's okay if you're someone that's not okay taking that risk, and you want to find employment somewhere else, or you're okay, your level of comfort is that can be fulfilled with something at a box gym or some other more structured route, that's totally fine. I'm not saying that that's not okay, but I think there's a lot of people that get into the fitness industry with a lot of ambition, but not much direction. So hopefully this can provide some direction for you guys that are listening, or anyone that is kind of to that point where, like, fuck, like, I like what I do, but I'm exhausted. I don't have any time. Like, there's ways that you can continue to move forward, but it will be uncomfortable, and it will be more uncomfortable before you get to that point where you now have the freedom of time or the freedom of mobility. So I think it's understanding that a lot of this is delayed gratification. You're going to have to work for it, but there is a way, and people that have done it and have done it well, they have that lateral mobility and they have a greater level of income because they've taken that risk, and they've been able to push back that gratification to something that really gives them the lifestyle that they want. And the last thing I'll say, start a retirement account right now if you don't have one. Fucking do it.
Yeah, that's the between that, like, take care of yourselves. I may have recently made a post recently being like, hey man, the number one, or one of the few number one things that I see that are just like the biggest blind spot for people in our industry is like what happens after. Like, you can't be in person, as we've said, all the time. You can't be insert whatever the next thing, the online coach forever, unless you can. And that's something to consider, and it's why I went with like that. There's the hamster wheel analogy, and then there's the stay in the current iteration of what you're doing past being over it for a longer period of time, like 3 to 5 years in person, even if you think you got it mastered within 1 or 2, because you have to figure out, like, is this something that if you change the trajectory or double down and create a business out of it, are you in it, or are you going to be over it within 2 or 3 years? And then you find yourself completely washed out of the industry with a business in your hand that didn't go anywhere and a job that you now hate because you had to get it. Like sustain the position longer than you think you need to validate the fact that you can make that next step, and just not wash out at that stage just as fast as a lot of people wash out in the first stage.
I love it. Any day that I can get some of Marek Bugera's wisdom is a good day for me. So thanks for being here, man. Thanks for sharing. If people want to reach out to you, where's a good place that they could find you?
Typically, I exist on Instagram. Pretty much, that's really it. TikTok doesn't exist, same as you. Just nah. At Marek Bugera, just my name. You'll see a lot of fitness writing or fitness adjacent writing on a photo-based, or I guess video-based platform now. I don't know. And then the same with website. I guess that's probably within a week of this dropping, whenever this comes out. I'm going to be starting to do full-length articles on my own website, ebugera.com, primarily expanding beyond what the confines of like an Instagram post would allow, like getting into full fleshed out, like maybe 2,000 word, like actual, let's dig into these more higher level concepts or for educational purposes or training philosophy, the whole thing.
Sick. All right. Well, I appreciate you. If you guys want more of Bugera, find him in the Prescript Collective. Again, you guys can sign up at the website, www.pre-script.com. Click the collective in the upper right-hand corner. You get access to Bugera is the moderator on the Discord channel. So he's in there. Some of his literature reviews. He runs technique labs along with literature review labs. So you get access to him. You get access to all of our Prescript coaches all over the world. It's a great resource for $35 a month. So hop in there if you guys want to get a little bit of an introduction to what we do at Prescript, but you're not fully on board with the courses yet. And then, like I said, the opt-in page is up for the level 1. Level 1 starts in September. So go over to the level 1 page, drop your email on the opt-in list, and we'll send you a discount when the course goes live for registration. And we also have Dr. Dwayne Jackson's body composition nutrition course up for sale right now. So thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for being here, Bugera. Appreciate you.
Yep. Later, friends.